of the internet, and I know that everyone's a book lover in some way, surely, hopefully. I pray. Anyway, my name is Briar, if we haven't met before. Hi, nice to meet you. I'm found on various corners of the internet, often talking about all sorts of things, but realistically, mostly talking about books, because that's what I do. I live and breathe and work and write and do a lot of things to do with books. So I've decided, after having a bit of fun when I did a video review for the Booksellers Association, Booksellers New Zealand, I thought, well, you know what? Let's do this in a more carefree environment, and maybe it can be a way of, I don't know, bringing some New Zealand books to some non-New Zealand viewers, because I've got a few people from overseas who I still natter with now and then. So, consider this Volume 1 test drive of Briar on Books. Patent pending. Anyway, so what I'm reading at the moment, just started as of last night, is Wake by Elizabeth Knox. So, full disclosure, got this book for free, but would have seriously considered purchasing it myself, because Elizabeth has a hell of a reputation among New Zealand authors, and I mean reputation in the best possible way. And shamefully, I've managed to get to 24 without actually having read any of her books, which pains me to say. One of those things, anyway. But it's published by Torrey University Press, who are always awesome. No vested interest. And it's got a cover designed by Dylan Horrocks, who's pretty awesome too. So basically, you've got three things going for it from the get-go. You've got Elizabeth Knox, you've got VUP's pedigree, and you've got Dylan Horrocks. So basically, I'll talk more about it when I've read more. But so far, I'm about 25 pages in. I'm sick, so I fell asleep quite quickly last night. Blame the codeine, not the book. It's creepy. It's creepy from the get-go, which is fantastic. I'm not normally one to read horror novels, I suppose, but I love me some dystopia, and I suppose in some ways vaguely horror zombie-ish novels. There's connections with dystopia, and in their own way. It's all about something earth-shattering happening. So watch this space for more information on Wake by Elizabeth Knox. But other things that I'm reading at the moment, or I'm about to read, so you can watch this space, I've decided to keep things thematic, because I've been jumping between things for a while, and I will always do that. It's what I do. But my other book that's next on my to-do list, of sort of slightly chunky, but not too chunky, literary books, is The Wake. Ha! I know, who would have thought such a theme could exist? The Wake by Paul Kingsnorth, which was recently longlisted for the Man Booker Prize. Didn't make the shortlist, unfortunately, but I have mixed feelings about the capabilities of this year's Booker Committee, because the Bone Clocks didn't make the shortlist, so I just don't have much trust in them this year. Obviously, I love them dearly. The different group who did it last year, this year, not so sure. Anyway, time will tell. I'll eventually get around to reading some of the other ones on the shortlist. But so, Wake. The Wake. I'm going to continue my recent times delving into graphic novels more, which has been a gradually growing interest over the past sort of 4 or 5 years. Longer, actually, I suppose, ever since I read Ghost World in my sort of late teen hipster years. But I'm currently reading the second volume of The Sandman. About damn time. I've loved Neil Gaiman for years. So that's another thing that's happening. If I get out my digital device, I don't limit myself to one platform, people. I'm reading things on my Kobo. It's going to come up in a second. Aha! More than this. Patrick Ness. Patrick Ness. Oh my god. I don't know how it took me this long to get into reading Patrick Ness. I think it's because I had a bit of a lull in my time that I got to spend in YA sections. But I've read the first two Chaos Walking books. Really, I should just be getting into Monsters and Men. I don't quite know why I'm distracting myself. But More Than This has been on my to-do list for ages as well, so I decided to go into that as well. So I'm reading that in digital form. But I'm also, because on a digital thing you can have more than one thing at once, reading this one. Now it's gonna have to do it this way for it to show up the screen. We're all completely beside ourselves, which The Guardian spoiled for me, so that was nice. Seriously, don't post a major twist in a post about various long-listed and shortlisted Man Booker winning books. I mean, you know, nominated books. It's just irresponsible. But I still want to read it, and the twist does sound really interesting. But I'm really peeved about that. It's really frustrating to have, you know, this major thing suddenly, like, in your face. Oh my god, my coffee bag has been in there for far too long. That's another thing I could talk about. Coffee, and why I shouldn't drink it, but why I do. Excuse me for one moment. Then you can see my magnificent cup of magnificent. So, pill cup. I know. So, yeah, that's where I'm at right now. So if you do watch these, you can expect blathering in my dulcet tones, talking about the books that I am reading, that I should be reading, that I have recently read. In terms of things that I have recently read, I've read The Naturalist by Tom Conroy. That was a doozy. Pretty damn good. The problem is these days that historical New Zealand fiction has kind of had the bar set really damn high in the past, you know, year and a bit. And I'm trying to not hold other books to that particular standard because everything's been written completely differently anyway, and it's not like people are trying to directly compete with the luminaries. In case you hadn't realised what I was talking about, somehow. But it has made it tricky, to be honest, because there's been this, you know, perfectly formed, giant piece of magnificence in terms of New Zealand historical fiction. It's hard for other things to line up, especially if they're in the same era, which I think was part of what made it a little bit difficult for me to get through The Naturalist in a timely fashion. I just kept, without even wanting to, thinking, really want to reread The Luminaries now. And it was really frustrating because there's nothing more distracting than deciding at frequent intervals during the book that you want to go back and reread an 832-page giant colossus of a novel. But so it goes. Other things that I've read recently, I've been on a YA bender, which I've actually kind of been on basically since I started working in regular indie bookshop world instead of academic bookshop world. It's been fab. Recent recommendations that I would like to make: We Were Liars by E. Lockhart. It's great. It's probably the best YA that I've read this year in that sort of contemporary fiction area. You know what I mean? Not Patrick Ness. Patrick Ness is in a league of his own in terms of YA. But We Were Liars was great, and there's been at least one or two John Green things that I've read this year that I hadn't read before. I think it's better than some of John Green's stuff. I also read If I Stay. Not so sure in that one. It was okay. Appealing to that demographic, I'm sure. It felt a bit forced in places and just generally, I don't know. I read it out of a sense of movie-related obligation, knowing that I'll probably eventually go see the movie. So that one, 2 or 3 out of 5 probably. Apparently suddenly I'm giving star ratings. Other ones that I've read that I need to read sequels of. Karen Healy. So good. Need to read the second one. Haven't gotten around to it. Keep getting distracted, excuse me. But first one, so good. Need to read the second one. That's and I always get my W words mixed up. When We Wake and While We Run? Correct me if I'm wrong. Would Google it, but then I'd have a moment of staring blankly at the screen, which always looks creepy on camera. Yeah, so that's kind of my reading sphere at the moment. I really should add more non-fiction in there. I find it quite shameful how little non-fiction I read, but if you look over here, you can see my non-fiction collection. Keep in mind that when I moved down to Wellington, I only brought like 3 of those books, maybe 4 of those books with me. Everything else are things that I required since I moved in January. So I've got a lot of stuff there that I should make myself get through. But I'm a fiction gal at heart. I think maybe too many years in academia and academic books sort of pulled away any desire to read factual stuff, and I just need to live in a fictional fairyland. But one day I'll get back to it. There's several things here that have bookmarks about 20 pages in, which is a bit pointless. Anyway, this has been the first edition of Briar Does Books, or whatever I decided I would call it earlier. Can't remember, something to do with Briar and books, because they both start with the same letter, and I'm not feeling very creative right now. It's difficult when you're A, sick, and B, the country is going mental in the week before election. So, if you watch this, thank you for watching it. Tell me if you'd like to hear about anything in particular. I can talk about books, I can talk about intestines, I can talk about coffee, I can talk about Wellington, I can talk about all sorts of things. I can talk about red hair, pink hair, the ducks on the wall, so many things. So many things. Sometimes it's nice to just talk instead of write. Not that I don't love writing, but talking's easier, and you just have to say it, and then it's out there, and you can't take it back. Anyway, so this has been Briar something something books. I will maybe see you next time. Go out and vote, and have a lovely time until next we meet. Ciao. Ah!